The day we buried my grandfather, my entire world collapsed. I stood frozen beside his casket, the funeral program shaking in my hands, when Victoria, my stepmother, leaned toward me. Her perfume cut through the cold air as she whispered, "Sophia, don't expect a cent from your grandfather's will. I promise you that." Her voice dripped with venom, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. The other mourners turned their heads, stunned by her cruelty, while Victoria smirked like she had already claimed every mansion, every account, every treasure. My chest burned with rage, but grief held my tongue. Then I saw the lawyer, Benjamin Hayes, standing near the headstone. His eyes met mine, and I swear I caught the faintest smile. "Actually," he said clearly, cutting through the silence, "there is one more item left." Victoria's face went pale. I knew the March wind bit through my coat as if determined to freeze every shred of strength left in me. The pastor's words faded into silence, and people began to drift toward their cars. I stayed rooted to the ground, staring at the fresh mound of earth covering my grandfather's grave. My hands trembled, not only from the cold but from the words Victoria had just thrown at me. She didn't stop. With a sigh of exaggerated relief, she snapped her clutch shut and announced loudly, "Finally, I can breathe again." Richard was such a heavy weight these last years, always sick, always demanding attention. Gasps rose among the guests. Mrs. Jenkins, one of Grandpa's oldest friends, shook her head in disbelief. I turned to Victoria, my voice cracking but sharp. "How dare you? He was my grandfather. We just laid him to rest, and this is what you say?" Victoria's red lips curved into a cruel smile. "Darling Sophia, don't be naive. He was my husband, which means everything he had, every house, every car, every dollar belongs to me now. You'll have to fend for yourself." A couple of my grandfather's business associates glanced at each other, whispering nervously. They had always respected him, and hearing his widow speak this way unsettled them. My throat ached. Anger and humiliation swirled inside me, but I forced myself to stand straighter. I could almost hear my grandfather's voice echoing in my memory. "Sophia, when people try to belittle you, remember you carry my name, and with it, my strength. Respect is the least you could show," I whispered fiercely, though tears burned my eyes. Victoria leaned in closer, lowering her voice so only I could hear. "Respect is for the living, sweetheart, and the living need wealth, not memories." She flicked her hair back, then strode away, her heels clicking sharply against the cemetery path. People looked at me with pity. Some avoided my eyes, unsure whether to comfort me or distance themselves from the unfolding drama. I clenched the funeral program in my fist until it nearly tore. I wanted to scream, to tell them all that she was lying, that Grandpa would never abandon me, but I had no proof. Not yet. As I watched Victoria disappear toward her luxury car, my grief hardened into something else. Determination. If she thought she had silenced me, she was wrong. As the mourners slowly filed out of the cemetery, I remained behind, staring at the gravestone with my grandfather's name freshly carved into the marble. Richard Parker, 1940 to 2025. The world knew him as a billionaire real estate tycoon, a man who built towers that touched the sky and deals that reshaped cities. But to me, he was simply Grandpa, the man who had rescued me from despair after my parents died, the man who filled the emptiness of my childhood with strength, laughter, and unwavering love. I could still picture him in his study, surrounded by shelves of leather-bound books and the faint scent of cedar. He'd sit with his sleeves rolled up, gold watch glinting under the lamp as he guided me through homework or taught me chess. "Sophia," he would say, tapping the board, "the queen is the most powerful piece, but even she must be careful. One wrong move, and the entire game collapses. Remember, power without wisdom is destruction." Those lessons weren't just about chess. They were about life. He taught me to read people, to value integrity over appearances, to see money not as treasure, but as a tool for good. I remembered summer afternoons in the mansion's garden, when Grandpa would roll up his trousers and help me plant flowers. Victoria had hated those moments, calling them peasant chores. But Grandpa only smiled at her disdain and whispered to me, "The soil reminds us where real wealth comes from." His generosity extended far beyond me. Every December, he hosted scholarship dinners for students whose families couldn't afford tuition. I often watched him kneel down to shake a child's hand, eyes shining with pride. To the world, he was a giant of business. To those children and to me, he was a giant of the heart. That's why Victoria's callousness at the funeral cut so deeply. She had never understood him. To her, Richard Parker was an ATM in human form, a ticket into high society. She never saw the way he softened when he read me bedtime stories, or how he cried quietly in the hospital waiting room the day I broke my leg. I pressed a hand against the gravestone, my tears dripping onto the cold stone. "I'll protect what you built, Grandpa," I whispered. "I'll protect your name, even if she tries to erase me." In that moment, grief transformed into resolve. Victoria thought she had won, but she didn't know Richard Parker as I did. He planned for everything. He never left a battle unfinished. And deep inside, I believed no. I knew he had prepared something for me. By the time I reached the Parker estate that evening, the sky was a bruised purple, clouds rolling heavy with spring rain. The mansion loomed in front of me, its windows glowing warm against the dark. I thought walking through those doors might give me comfort, one last reminder of Grandpa's presence. Instead, what I found stopped my heart cold. 3 suitcases sat neatly stacked on the marble steps, my initials embroidered on the sides, my clothes, my life, packed and waiting. I froze. "What is this?" I whispered, though I already knew the answer. The massive oak doors creaked open, and Victoria appeared in a silk robe, a glass of red wine in her hand. Her eyes sparkled with satisfaction. "Oh good, you're back. Saves me the trouble of sending someone to drop those off at a motel." My chest tightened. "You can't be serious. This is my home. Grandpa wanted me here." "Correction," she purred, leaning against the doorframe. "It was his home. Now it's mine. And you? You're nothing but an uninvited guest." I tried to push past her, but she blocked the doorway. "Victoria, please. It's been 1 day since the funeral. Let me stay until I figure out where to go." Her smile turned razor-sharp. "Did you not hear me at the cemetery? You won't get a cent, Sophia. Not a cent. And you won't get a roof over your head, either. Your room was a courtesy. Courtesy ends with Richard's life." My pulse hammered in my ears. "You can't just throw me out. Grandpa would never allow this." She set her wineglass down on the marble table inside, then pulled a manila envelope from the console. With deliberate cruelty, she held it out. "Oh, but I can. Here's the agreement signed by Richard himself last year. Temporary residency for Sophia Parker, subject to termination upon the death of Richard Parker." My hands shook as I scanned the paper under the porch light. The signature was undeniably his. My stomach twisted. Could he really have written this? "You forged this," I snapped, voice breaking. Victoria laughed, low and cold. "Think what you like, but the law will side with me. And in 15 minutes, if you're not gone, the security guards will escort you off the property like the squatter you are." Tears burned down my cheeks, but I refused to let her see me crumble. I bent down, grabbed the handle of my suitcase, and steadied my voice. "You think you've won. But Grandpa never lost a battle in his life. He won't lose this one either." Her eyes narrowed. "We'll see about that." The doors shut with a thunderous slam, the sound of deadbolts clicking into place. One by one, the lights in the mansion blinked off, as if she were erasing me from every corner of the home that had once been filled with laughter and love. I stood in the rain, clutching my suitcase, my hair plastered to my face. The grand estate behind me no longer belonged to me but the blood in my veins. The legacy Richard Parker had poured into me, still did. And as I dragged my belongings down the driveway toward my battered car, I whispered to myself through clenched teeth, "This isn't over. Not by a long shot." The neon sign outside the Lakeview Inn flickered like a dying heartbeat as I pulled my car into the lot. Rain streaked the windshield, each drop echoing the rhythm of my own despair. I had gone from marble floors and chandeliers to peeling wallpaper and buzzing fluorescent lights in the span of a single day. Room 112 smelled faintly of cigarettes and bleach. The carpet was threadbare, the bedspread a faded floral pattern from decades past. I set my suitcases down on the floor and sat at the edge of the bed, my hands covering my face. The silence was deafening. For the first time, I let the sobs come. "Why, Grandpa?" I whispered into the darkness. "Why would you leave me with her? Why would you sign that paper?" My tears blurred the memory of his warm smile, his strong voice, his promise that he would always take care of me. The night stretched endlessly, the rain beating against the window like cruel applause. Just as exhaustion began to pull me under, the shrill ring of the motel's old rotary phone startled me upright. I hesitated, staring at it as if it might bite. No one even knew I was here. My fingers trembled as I picked up the receiver. "Hello?" My voice cracked. "Sophia?" The voice was deep, calm, and strangely reassuring. "This is Benjamin Hayes, your grandfather's attorney." I sat up straighter, heart pounding. "Mr. Hayes? How did you know where to find me?" He chuckled softly. "Richard made sure I would. He anticipated certain difficulties. He left instructions." My breath caught. "Instructions?" "Yes," he replied. "And I can't discuss them over the phone. But I want you to know this, your grandfather was very thorough. He thought of everything. Trust me, Sophia, all is not lost." Tears welled in my eyes again, but this time from something I hadn't felt in days. "Hope. She told me I'd get nothing," I whispered. "Victoria said she owns it all." Hayes's tone hardened. "Victoria may believe that, but belief and truth are rarely the same. The will is being read on Friday at 2 p.m. I expect you there. Bring your strength, child. You'll need it." The line went dead, leaving me clutching the receiver like a lifeline. My heart raced as his words replayed in my mind. He thought of everything. For the first time since Grandpa's funeral, I felt the faintest glimmer of his presence beside me, as if he were whispering through the storm, guiding me toward a battle he had already prepared. And I swore then, in that shabby motel room with rain leaking through the window frame, that I would fight for him, for his legacy, for myself. Friday arrived with a biting wind, though the sun shone deceptively bright over the city. I had barely slept the night before, replaying Benjamin Hayes's words again and again. He thought of everything. I clung to that phrase as I buttoned my only black suit jacket and walked into the towering glass building downtown. The 28th floor smelled of polished wood and fresh coffee. Hayes's office radiated power and precision: mahogany shelves, thick carpets, and a view of the skyline that made the city below look like a chessboard. My stomach churned. This was it. Inside the conference room, I froze. Victoria was already seated at the long table, draped in a designer black suit that screamed both widow and queen. Beside her sat a sharp-faced attorney with a leather briefcase. Victoria didn't even glance at me until I took my seat. Then her lips curled. "Well, well, Sophia decided to show up. Brave, considering you're about to be very disappointed." I clenched my fists beneath the table, but before I could reply, Hayes entered. His presence silenced the room. He carried a stack of folders under one arm, his silver hair gleaming under the lights. "Thank you all for being here," he said smoothly. "Today we honor the wishes of Richard Parker. Every word in this document was his own. My job is simply to ensure they are carried out." Behind him stood two witnesses: Mr. Lewis, Grandpa's longtime business partner, and Margaret Ellis, our family's trusted housekeeper for over 30 years. Their faces were solemn, their presence steadying me like anchors. Hayes settled at the head of the table and opened the will. His voice took on a formal cadence, each word weighted with authority. "This is the last will and testament of Richard Parker, dated the 12th of December 2024. Victoria leaned back in her chair, crossing her legs. She looked like a queen awaiting coronation. I wanted to scream at her smugness, but I bit my tongue. Hayes continued. "To my beloved wife, Victoria Parker, I leave the family residence on Maplewood Drive, including all furnishings and art. I also leave her my collection of vehicles and the joint bank accounts held at First National." Victoria's smile bloomed like poison roses. She turned her head just enough to whisper, "Told you, Sophia. Nothing for you." Heat surged through me, but I stayed silent, gripping the chair until my knuckles went white. The witnesses shifted uncomfortably. Hayes raised a hand before Victoria could gloat further. "That concludes the preliminary bequests, but there are additional provisions." The air in the room shifted. Even Victoria's attorney straightened in her seat. Hayes adjusted his glasses, and a flicker of something almost amusement crossed his face. Richard Parker was nothing if not meticulous, and what comes next will require everyone's full attention. My pulse thundered in my ears. I could feel it, the ground beneath Victoria's throne was about to crack. Benjamin Hayes's voice carried across the conference room like a gavel striking wood. To my granddaughter, Sophia Parker, who has stood by me with loyalty and love, I leave. He paused deliberately, eyes scanning the room. 50% of Parker Global Holdings, including all voting rights, shares, and dividends. The silence that followed was deafening. My heart nearly stopped. 50%? That was the empire my grandfather had built, a corporation valued in the billions. I blinked at Hayes, certain I'd misheard, but his calm expression told me otherwise. Across the table, Victoria's wine-red nails dug into the armrest. "This is absurd," she spat. "She's a child. She doesn't know the first thing about running a corporation." Hayes remained unfazed. Mr. Parker was explicit. He entrusted Sophia with his legacy. Furthermore, she is to receive all personal effects of sentimental value, including the watch collection, the study library, and the charitable foundations established in his name. My throat tightened. Grandpa's watch, the one he used to check before every meeting, tapping the face with a smile. Tears pricked my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Victoria shot to her feet. "Fraud. This will is fraudulent. Richard would never put his life's work into the hands of a naive little girl." Her attorney, Miss Stone, tried to pull her back down. "Victoria, please, let's remain calm." "No." Victoria's voice rose, echoing off the glass walls. "This is a conspiracy. She manipulated him while he was weak, dying." I found my own voice, steady though my heart thundered. "Don't you dare twist this. Grandpa knew you didn't love him. You loved his wealth. And now the truth is out." Gasps rippled among the witnesses. Margaret Ellis, the housekeeper, leaned forward. "I saw Mr. Parker working on this will personally, Victoria. He was sharper than ever. He knew exactly what he was doing." Mr. Lewis nodded firmly. Richard anticipated every possibility. He wasn't senile, and he wasn't deceived. He chose Sophia. Victoria's face blanched, then flushed scarlet. She jabbed a trembling finger in my direction. "You think this changes anything? You may have paper in your hand, but I have the house, the money, the influence. You're nothing without me." Hayes cleared his throat, his calm authority reclaiming the room. "Actually, Mrs. Parker, there is more. The house and the liquid assets are yours, yes. But Parker Global Holdings is the beating heart of Richard's empire, and Sophia now controls half of it. Without her, you cannot touch the company." The look on Victoria's face was almost inhuman, half rage, half disbelief. She sank back into her chair, knuckles white, lips trembling. I inhaled slowly, forcing my hands to unclench. For the first time since the funeral, I felt something resembling power. Not revenge, not victory, just the weight of my grandfather's trust settling on my shoulders. But Hayes wasn't done. He placed a separate envelope on the table, his eyes flicking toward me, then to Victoria. "There is one final clause," he said, his tone grave. "And it changes everything you think you know." The room seemed to hold its breath. Benjamin Hayes adjusted his glasses, his calm eyes scanning the tense room. "Richard Parker added a conditional clause 3 weeks before his passing," he announced, sliding a sealed folder across the table. "He made me promise it would be read only after the primary distributions." Victoria leaned forward, eyes blazing. "What clause?" Hayes's voice dropped into a measured cadence. "If my wife, Victoria Parker, attempts to force my granddaughter Sophia Parker out of the family estate within 1 year of my death, then all assets previously granted to her, including the mansion, vehicles, and bank accounts shall be revoked and transferred to Sophia Parker in full." The words detonated like a bomb. For a moment, no one moved. Then Victoria let out a strangled laugh, high-pitched and shaky. This is ridiculous. No court will honor such nonsense." Hayes folded his hands. "Conditional bequests are entirely legal, Mrs. Parker. Your husband ensured this clause was airtight. In fact, he opened the folder and slid a document toward her. It includes witness signatures, notarization, and a video statement from Mr. Parker himself. My heart raced. I remembered the night she had tossed my suitcases onto the steps, her voice cold as steel. If you're not gone in 15 minutes, the guards will throw you out. Every humiliating second of that night now echoed back as proof of her cruelty. Victoria's face drained of color. No, I didn't, she left willingly. I slammed my palms on the table, my voice trembling with fury. You locked the door in my face. You told me I was nothing, and now everyone will see exactly who you are. The witnesses nodded grimly. Mr. Lewis crossed his arms. I heard the security guards that night. They were told to prepare to escort Sophia. Richard knew what you were capable of, Victoria. That's why he planned this. Hayes pressed a button on the small screen at the center of the table. Let's allow Richard to speak for himself. The monitor flickered to life. My grandfather appeared, thinner, his skin pale, but his eyes sharp and alive with purpose. Seeing him again ripped the air from my lungs. Victoria, his voice rang out, steady as ever. If you're watching this, it means you've betrayed both me and Sophia. I gave you my name, my trust, and years of loyalty. Yet I know your heart. You value wealth more than love. That is why I left Sophia not just half of Parker Global Holdings, but a chance to claim everything if you proved me right. Victoria's breathing turned ragged. She shook her head, whispering, No, no. He loved me. He wouldn't. Grandpa's eyes on the screen softened when he spoke my name. Sophia, if you're listening, know this. You are my true heir. You carry not only my blood but my values. Dignity, strength, compassion. If Victoria casts you out, then every piece of my estate belongs to you, because she has no place in a legacy built on love. Tears blurred my vision. My chest ached with both grief and vindication. The video ended, leaving silence heavy in the room. Victoria shot to her feet, knocking over her chair. This is manipulation. He was sick, dying. She put these ideas into his head. Hayes's tone was iron. Mrs. Parker, I assure you, Richard recorded this in full possession of his faculties. His doctors confirmed his mental clarity until the very end. This clause has already been triggered the moment you expelled Sophia from the mansion. You can't do this, she screamed, her voice cracking. I am his wife. This fortune is mine. No, I said quietly, standing now, my voice steadier than I thought possible. It was never yours. It was his. And now it's mine. The color drained completely from her face. She staggered, clutching the table for balance. Gasps filled the room as she collapsed, fainting into her lawyer's arms. For the first time since the funeral, I felt the weight of my grandfather's hand on my shoulder, not in body, but in spirit. He had protected me, even from beyond the grave. The weeks that followed were a blur of legal battles, headlines, and whispered gossip in high society circles. Victoria fought with every ounce of her pride, hiring expensive attorneys to challenge the will. She claimed undue influence, fraud, mental incapacity, every desperate angle. But each time, Hayes dismantled her arguments with calm precision. Witnesses testified. Doctors confirmed my grandfather's clarity of mind. Even the video of Richard himself silenced the courtroom with undeniable truth. By the end of the month, the judge's gavel fell. All of Richard Parker's estate, including the mansion, bank accounts, and corporate holdings, was mine. Victoria was ordered to vacate immediately. The day she left, she didn't look like the triumphant widow from the funeral. She was pale, shoulders slumped, dragging her designer suitcase like dead weight. For the first time, I almost pitied her. But then I remembered her laughter at the graveside, her cold eyes when she threw me out into the rain. Pity faded into something sharper: justice. Standing in the grand foyer of the mansion, keys trembling in my hand, I whispered to the empty halls, I'm home, Grandpa. But I knew this wasn't just about me. Richard Parker had raised me to believe wealth was a responsibility, not a weapon. Within weeks, I established the Richard Parker Scholarship Fund, offering full rides to students from struggling families, the same children Grandpa used to kneel down and encourage. At Parker Global Holdings, I took my seat at the boardroom table. The executives looked at me with a mix of doubt and respect. I straightened my shoulders, hearing Grandpa's words echo. The Queen is the most powerful piece, Sophia. Play wisely. I vowed to honor his legacy, not by hoarding what he built, but by using it to lift others. One evening, as I worked late in his study, I found his old gold watch resting on the desk. I slipped it onto my wrist, the weight familiar, grounding. Outside, the city lights glimmered like a million possibilities. Make me proud, Sophia. I could almost hear him whisper, and I promised him I would.